Right. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Dreambound. In the last episode, I stopped just before Kaine and Noah were about to go out to eat. So that's what we're going to have at the beginning here. I just wanted to remind you of that before we hopped in case you forgot and you're suddenly like, what are we doing? But otherwise, let's just hop in and see what happens next. Things fell into a comfortable silence as the pair traversed the mountainside and headed towards an old cafe they used to stop by after school. Fortunately, it was still in business, and they quickly selected their regular chairs, a nice spot right by the window, so they could enjoy the view. They finished eating quickly and left soon enough, standing out under the endlessly blue sky. The place hasn't changed at all, huh? Kaine chuckled. 6 years later, and the same old cafe serves the same old hamburgers, and the sky was still blue. Noah looked up towards the clouds high above them, white cotton fluff moving ever so slowly. Fleeting. Noah felt a slight breeze, and he closed his eyes. It was only a few years ago that Noah, Kaine, and August had made the same walk, scaling the mountain after school to return home each day. That was the one thing that had changed. This town felt a little less brighter than it did before. Noah opened his eyes again as Kaine was looking down at his phone. There's a library around here, actually. You know, that one we went to sometimes in the summer holidays. There never was anything to do here. We could stop by, see if we can find anything. Noah nodded in agreement. It was a short walk to the library, and a pleasant one. The afternoon sun was warm and soothing on his skin, and the light breeze kept it from being too hot. All was calm and quiet. The pair walked past a few people on the way there, kids on their way home, teenagers walking their dogs. So much normalcy that it was overwhelming. By the time they arrived, Noah was thinking, somewhere in that sea of normality could be the killer. And this crowd of people, so ignorant of their current situation, could walk a person covered in the blood of others. Noah gulped down that thought and entered the library. Okay, why is there a tree in the middle of the library? The library, the only one in town, wasn't huge by any standards. Are you kidding me? But it had a decent selection. As always, the library was quiet, but people were around. In some strange way, even through all the tragedy, people just kept carrying on. I suppose that's the only thing they can do. The world goes on whether people are being mysteriously killed or not. I love the smell of books. How about I hit the people and you hit the books? I don't know if they'll appreciate you hitting people in a library. Haha, very funny. Hey, if art doesn't work out, there's always comedy. I'll keep that in mind. In all seriousness, that works for me. Meet back up here in a bit. Don't get in too much trouble, all right? Yeah, that's a serious worry in a public library. A grin later, and Kaine had already gone over to the front counter. He leaned across it, a wide smile on his face as he chatted with the librarian present. He really always was charismatic. Noah turned towards the shelves and shelves of books. Where was he to start? How useful could a book be? He didn't hold out much hope for useful information. And then something Kaine said tugged on his mind. Some of the local newspapers wrote about the murders. Maybe I'll check those out first. Noah walked towards the newspaper archive and found that it was remarkably updated compared to when he was a kid. There was a screen attached to the shelf where you could search by date or topics, and it would give you the shelf number, so Noah started with something simple. Markings. A few results popped up, and Noah made note of the shelf numbers and went around to collect the newspapers. 20 or so minutes later, Noah sat down in a quiet corner with a handful of newspapers. Noah picked up the first one. The headline on the front cover read, "Murder Mystery?" in all caps. Noah cringed a little, but quickly read through the passage. Flower markings appearing on bodies. This one mentions my parents. 2 people were found dead in their own home days apart, with not a wound on either of them. The only common link was the strange, vine-like markings that were not previously seen on the couple. Noah looked at the photos for a few moments before putting the newspaper down. Why? He read on, picking up the next newspaper. This one was an interview with an expert. It read, "Such a bizarre thing to happen in such a sleepy little town. It's been taken for everything from a strange natural phenomenon to a supernatural occurrence. As a scientist, I have to say the latter isn't even a remote possibility, but a natural phenomenon is what it could be. We could be looking at a new, undocumented illness. Whether curable, controllable, or fatal, it's yet to be determined. There are, however, some theories circulating the internet about these markings, like a serial killer with a tattoo attraction, but that's incredibly unlikely." With a sigh, Noah put down the newspaper. When he picked up the third one, he paused. The paper was yellowed, and his eyes quickly found the date. It was over 6 years old. Confused, Noah flipped through the pages, reading the headlines. Mysterious markings? His eyes quickly scanned the article. 2 people were found dead in their apartment. Strange markings wound around their chests and shoulders. The only person present was their son. Later on, 2 similar cases were discovered in the small town of Summerfield, with a single mother discovered dead in her home. Her 10-year-old daughter was present. Okay, damn. Lastly, a teenage boy suffered an unrelated injury, and later nurses found similar markings on his body, though he was still alive. Okay. This happened before? On such a small scale, though. Just what is going on here? Noah's eyes rose up from the newspaper just in time to see someone standing a few meters away, picking a few books from the shelf. A person Noah recognized. It was Reuben, previously Asher's best friend, though from the sounds of things that was no longer the case. I doubt he knows much about what's going on, but it's worth reaching out anyway, isn't it? Noah stood and approached the man. "Hey, you're Reuben, right?" He set his books aside, then looked up. "Do we know each other?" It's Noah. It had been 6 years since Noah had last seen Reuben in the flesh, so it made sense if he'd forgotten him. Noah, Asher's brother. For better or worse. Reuben's expression was placid, as it always had been before. He'd always been an incredibly calm, zen person. I wish I could be more like that. "I didn't know that you were back in town." "Yeah, well, it was a bit sudden. I didn't intend to come back, but after everything that happened..." "Everything?" Reuben looked confused for a few moments before realization seemed to dawn. "Ah, your parents, right? I'm sorry." "No, it's alright." "Is it?" "Well, I have conflicted feelings about it, but I guess not. But I'm hanging in there the best I can for the moment." "Do you like to read, Noah?" I haven't picked up a book in a while. I used to be into manga a bit, I guess." Reuben had a far-off look in his eyes. "You should try it. It helps." He walked past Noah and sat down across from where Noah had been reading his newspapers a moment ago. Noah sat back down. "I guess I can pretend I don't know anything about him and Asher fighting." "Have you seen my brother much lately? I think he's taking it a lot worse than I am." Reuben had already opened a book and was reading like Noah hadn't spoken to him at all. "Reuben?" "Not for a while. We went our separate ways a few years ago. I still bump into him sometimes, I guess." There was a hint of hurt in Reuben's voice, but his tone was carefully composed. "He and I got into a fight the other day, too." "That's not surprising, knowing him." "Do you remember Kaine? He gave me a lift here and intended to hang out for the funeral planning." I don't think that Asher really cared. He probably just wanted a reason to lash out. Reuben put his book down. He wasn't always like that. Or at least I thought he wasn't. Did he ever lash out at you? Reuben shook his head. Why, I found it such a surprise when you told me back then how he treated you. Noah felt a pang of guilt. He knew he had nothing to feel guilty about. Asher had done this to himself, but he still found himself looking towards the floor. At first I wanted to think he was misunderstood, but, well, I guess that's just how he is. When you next see him, tell him I'm sorry about your parents, would you? Of course. Noah frowned. There was something faintly tragic about it when he considered how close Reuben and Asher had been. Reuben had been Asher's best, and perhaps only, friend. It was unfortunate their relationship had fallen apart so spectacularly, to such an extent Reuben would not even call Asher when his parents had died. What in the world happened between them anyway? I know they fought after I told Reuben how Asher treated me, but why did Reuben take it so personally? But I guess asking would be rude. I don't know Reuben well enough for that. There is something I've been meaning to ask him, though. I'm actually in town for a couple of reasons. Would it be okay if I asked you something? Reuben had already gone back to his book, but he set it down again, without even a sigh. He nodded. How can I word this where I don't sound insane? I've been paying attention to the news since my parents, passed away. Because it was so unusual. You mean those marks on their bodies? I read a few books like that once, about a calling card left by killers. Is that what you think they are? Maybe. So you know that more people have shown up since then, I'm guessing. A lot of people are talking about them, so I can't help but hear about it. They all have those same markings across their bodies. Other than that, the bodies were more or less undisturbed. And no murder weapons. It's definitely a mystery. Kaine and I were hoping to learn more about it while we were here. You're looking for the killer? Is that a good idea? Well, it's like you said. The first two victims were my parents. Of course I want to know who killed them. And more than that, I need to see this through. I need to put this behind me. Right. Sorry, that makes sense. It's alright. I know that looking into these deaths isn't going to bring them back. But I can't stand the uncertainty, of not knowing who did it. I don't want more people to be hurt if there's something I can do about it. The police have been drawing a blank. They don't seem to have any clues, or if they do, they've not published them. Noah jumped. Noah jumped as he felt a hand on his shoulder and whipped around to see Kaine's grinning face. God, Kaine, are you trying to give me a heart attack? Hey, just wanted to join in on the catch-up session. Hey, Reuben. You might not remember me, but Kaine, right? I remember you. You were often over at Asher's place when I was. Kaine took the seat next to Noah and brushed his hair back. Is he doing all right, you think? Not really. I don't think he's coping all that well with 2 funerals all on his own. I mean, I'm here to help, but he's never wanted to do much with me. I understand feeling a little bad for him, but he's dug his own hole. He's capable of climbing out if he wants to. Is he? Noah, he's pushed everyone who cares about him away. You can't feel guilty about that. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt the conversation. We were just saying that the police have been totally drawing a blank over everything that's going on. They must be seriously incompetent. It's ridiculous, really, that he hasn't been caught yet after taking so many lives. He? Reuben looked at Kaine sharply. Did they announce that or something? No, that was just a force of habit, I guess. Anyone's capable of committing crimes, of course. Sorry, my bad. Reuben just shrugged. No need to apologize. I'm not offended on behalf of all female serial killers out there or anything. Well, in any case, I imagine you must be pretty worried about all this. Worried? Not really. It's sad, but I don't really feel like I have anything to be worried about. I just thought it might be worrying, that's all, when so many people from this town have died. If I still lived here, I might be panicking, especially when it seems like there's a killer in your midst. You think the killer lives in this town? Doesn't that make the most sense? The 4 victims did live here. I guess, at a time. 3 of the victims were living in this town when their bodies were uncovered, but Luca lived in a city 3 hours away. Huh. Kaine's brow furrowed. That's a good point. I guess I didn't consider that. Noah, intrigued by Ruben's insights, posed a question to him. Do you think that makes it less likely the crimes were carried out by the same person, then? Ruben hummed as he quietly contemplated the question. He seemed so thoughtful and calm, even when they were talking about murder. Noah was impressed just how calm he seemed. He'd always been like that, but it surprised Noah anew. For a moment, he thought Ruben was so lost in his thoughts that he'd forgotten to respond once again, but eventually, he did answer. Luca's body was found in a similar state with the same markings on his neck. That makes me think it's one person doing all of this. That or the first 3 bodies were killed by the same individual, and the 4th was a copycat killing. The different locations the bodies were found in does make me wonder. But I'm not a detective. I just read a lot of books. I doubt I could work out something a police officer couldn't. I wouldn't be so sure about that. Ruben might have possessed a dreamy quality to him, despite being a resident of the real world, but he was intelligent. According to Asher, he tore through multiple books a day for fun, and had made short work of every hardback in their school's library. Ruben's voracious appetite for reading was unparalleled. In fact, Noah had to wonder whether that was why Ruben always looked so tired. If anybody could help Noah come up with some leads, it was Ruben. But he doesn't know about the dream world, and there's only so much I can tell him. If he knew the crimes were being carried out in dreams, it would make his concerns about the distance between the bodies irrelevant. When you're in a dream, things like physical distance don't matter. I can't exactly tell Ruben about that, though. He'll think I'm delusional. Ruben examined Noah from across the tabletop, his eyes still indifferent. Don't you think you're the one who ought to be worried about this, anyway? Huh? What do you mean? The people who were murdered, didn't you know them all? Your parents, classmates, people you knew, right? Right. Ruben had picked up his book at some point, and still stared down at it as he spoke to Noah and Kaine. Don't you think that's interesting? It could be a coincidence. Seems more like a pattern to me. A pretty obvious, amateur one. If I saw it in a book, I could probably guess who the killer was straight away. You think there's a chance it could be me? Ruben contemplated Noah quietly for a moment. Not really. I don't think you have it in you to be a killer. What, am I too soft? Not at all. I think you're too kind-hearted. I wouldn't call that soft, and it's not a bad thing. Your parents were... His face screwed up, and Noah was reminded of the times where his mother had been beyond rude to Ruben, looking down on him, pitying him. That's right. Something happened with his parents, too. Well, the way they treated you and Asher, I wouldn't be surprised if you held a grudge, but you're still here trying to solve this. Noah looked towards Ruben with surprise in his eyes. What do you mean, the way they treated Asher? Asher mentioned that too, but they adored him. My mother used to act like he could do no wrong. Well, I don't doubt that's the impression you got, but Asher said she more or less ignored him in favor of you. She expected him to succeed, being the oldest son, so she left him to his own devices. I think he found it isolating. That's a good thing, though. I wish that mom had avoided me. Instead, she stuck her nose into every single thing in my life, She was constantly watching, belittling, and disregarding everything I did in some way, without ever having the time to pay attention to what I actually wanted in life. If she left me alone, life would have been so much easier. I'm sure it would have. But you know Asher. He always thrived on attention. I think he begrudged you for it, stealing so much of her attention. If attention's what he wanted, he would have been welcome to it. I never wanted her getting on my case all the time about my grades or my friends or my hobbies. I know. I don't agree with him. I was just telling you how he thinks of your situation. I wish he'd just talk to me about it. He's not very good at talking things out. You'd know just as well as me, I guess. So, anyway, no, I don't think you could commit a murder. You're not the kind to turn to violence easily, are you? Reuben leant back in his chair, his expression contemplative. Asher is the kind of person who would do it, I think. You think Asher might be behind this? Not really. He didn't even know those students who died. He's just the type of person who could kill, I feel. But that might be going too far, even for a man like Asher. He can be cold-hearted and cruel, but at the end of the day, I think he's too much of a coward to commit murder. Wow, Kaine laughed, wryly. That's quite the character assassination there. I thought the two of you were supposed to be friends. I wish we still were. Asher was... He was the only person who stood by my side when I left home with my brother. I didn't realize something like that happened. No wonder they were close. You said you hadn't spoken to him in a few years? It isn't for lack of trying on Asher's part. He's tried to contact me, and I've thought about replying, but family's important to me, Noah. I thought he understood that. I know what it's like to have crappy family members. I hate it. I never thought he'd be that crappy person, too. Well, he never tried hard to make himself likable. That's not entirely true. He did try to make himself likable at school. He wore himself out, acting like the perfect model student. He always had a smile and a kind word to spare for everybody, but deep down he resented all of our classmates, and he resented our teachers, too. He resented anybody who didn't realize just how hard he was working. I think I'm the only person he was ever honest with. Other than you, I suppose, Noah. He spent so much time being perfect at school, he couldn't keep the charade up at home. That's probably why he was so cruel to you. Not that it excuses his behavior. You never did anything wrong, after all. So, you don't really hate him, huh? I wish I could. Anyway, Reuben looks back to his mountainous pile of books, opening the one on the very top. Sorry I couldn't be more help. I hope you can find some closure. I hope you can, too. Noah stood and picked up his newspapers from the tabletop. It was good seeing you. Reuben didn't respond after that. He was too engrossed in his reading. Noah quickly returned the newspapers back to their correct places, then faced Kaine. How did it go? Nothing really juicy. There's a lot of gossip, but it's just that. Gossip. I guess you flirted with the 60-year-old librarian for nothing. Kaine laughed. Maybe not for nothing. She was quite the firecracker for an old lady. I'm kidding. I'm sure she's wonderful, but I'm not really into older women. Not that much older, at least. Putting aside talk of MILFs and all that, how about we head out? As much as I like libraries, it's getting late and I'm starving. Yeah, I could use some fresh air. The pair exited the library and found that the sun had already retreated over the horizon. It was already well into the evening. Noah sighed slightly. Time flew by, and there was so much he needed to do, yet he seemed to just be going in circles. While you were chatting up older women, I was reading a few newspapers. Oh yeah? Anything interesting? Well, There was a lot of the same gossip and speculation, but I did find something interesting. Noah felt his pocket buzz and pulled out his old flip-top phone, seeing that he had a few missed calls and messages. Ah, shit. What, everything okay? Sorry, let me just check this. He quickly opened the most recent message that simply read, I'm outside your place. I'll wait for you to get home, no rush. Shit. I invited Mr. Floyd over, remember? I totally forgot while I was talking to Ruben. He texted me over an hour ago. There's no way he'll still be waiting. Damn it, how could I forget? Well, knowing him, he could well still be there. Why don't we hurry back and check? A nod later, and the pair sped through the darkened streets. There were still plenty of people hanging around, fortunately, though that changed when they reached the mountainside, which was quiet and dark. Carefully, they made their way upwards, but the whole time Noah's chest felt awfully tight. He thought back to a terrible storm, to scaling the same path up and down in search of someone in particular. His every footstep was accompanied with the image of a broken body somewhere at the bottom of the steep drop. Okay. Look towards Kaine? Noah looked towards Kaine. His face was covered in shadows, but even Noah could tell he looked pale, smaller than usual, even with those broad shoulders. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Let's keep going. Kaine? I had a bad experience here once. Sorry, I didn't think I was so obvious. I guess I should work on my acting, huh? In that moment, Noah felt like he related to Kaine more than ever. There was a fragileness to him that he didn't usually notice. But still, they continued, and soon enough, the trail steadied out and more lights were present as they reached Noah's house. As they approached, they both saw a shadow hunched over on the front steps. Noah tensed up a little before finally relaxing. Noah from 2 weeks ago would have ran. He would have been filled with anger and hate and malice. But the Noah now found himself ready to listen. He wasn't necessarily ready to forgive, but he was open for giving him a chance. Do you want me here for this? Please. Kaine nodded, but stayed quiet as Noah approached him. Mr. Floyd. Noah? He lifted his head and stared up at Noah. I thought you were playing a joke on me. Yeah, well, I wasn't. I figured you'd never want to see me again. You figured right. But I guess I'm feeling a little bit more brave about confronting problems nowadays. So I decided to come face to face with my past and the people who I hated. Noah, let's talk inside. It's cold out. Mr. Floyd gulped down whatever he was going to say. Okay. All right, and with them heading inside, I'm going to go ahead and end this episode here. I'm not going to lie, I'm surprised that Mr. Floyd was still there, still outside of the house. I would have been so sad if he left, of course, because as I said in the previous episode, I'm very excited for this conversation. I really want them to come to an understanding and maybe not be friends, but at the very least be friendly and not have this hatred between them. So I'm happy that this conversation is about to happen, but I am also surprised that it's happening in general because I definitely thought that Noah was going to miss Mr. Floyd. Anyway, that's going to have to be for the next episode though, because we are running out of time in this episode. I'm definitely excited for it. I don't know about you guys, but I hope that you're excited as I am to see that conversation with Mr. Floyd. But I'm going to go ahead and end this episode for now. So, thank you for watching this episode. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one for some more Dreambound.